This is LibreQuest. My name is Matt. The date is the 7th of October 2019. Before I get into the articles that I have for today, I wanted to give a brief explanation of what happened. Last Friday, I had intended to post a new video about playing a video game. And that's what I stated. But however, that is not how things worked out. So my life being as hectic as it is, I don't usually have a lot of time to do other things like make a podcast. So I am going to go to my website here, the LibreQuest website, and I'm just going to read what I posted here. So I actually created a new section called Important Announcements so that if anything like what happens again, I'll just be able to post it there, and if anybody's interested, they can go and check under the announcements. So episode 6 delayed, and episode 5 of LibreQuest published on Thursday, October 3rd, 2019. It was announced that in the following episode there would be a game review. Unfortunately, due to technical issues and time constraint, the episode will be delayed. Episode 6 was intended to be the episode to announce the first raffle item. That raffle item is the game that will be reviewed. Therefore, the raffle item announcement will be delayed until next week as well. Please continue to check here for any podcast schedule changes, and check back next week for a new episode showcasing this excellent retro game. Thanks for being a listener, Matt. So that's what I wrote over on LibreQuest.org. And unfortunately, I never actually got that game completely working. So I will talk about that. But first, an article from Softpedia News. This was posted by Marius Nestor on October 4th, 2019. Total War, Warhammer 2, The Hunter and the Beast DLC released for Linux and Mac. British video games publisher Feral Interactive announced the general availability of the Hunter and the Beast DLC for Total War Warhammer 2, video game both for Linux and Mac OS platforms. Developed by Creative Assembly and published by Sega, the Total War Warhammer 2 was ported by Feral Interactive to the Linux and Mac OS platforms on November 20th, 2018. The game launched with the Mortal Empires DLC, as well as other free and paid DLCs that were released since the initial launch of the game back in October 2017. The Hunter and Beast is the latest downloadable content, or DLC, for Total War Warhammer 2, bringing many new additions like 2 new legendary lords, Marcus Wolfhart, who leads the Hunts Marshals expedition, the Empire, and Nakai, the Wanderer, who leads the Spirit of the Jungle Lizardmen. Both new legendary lords come with their new own faction mechanics, legendary items, quest chains, campaign narrative, and skill trees for the Vortex campaign. So if you can't tell, I'm really not familiar with that game, and if you want to read the rest of that article, it is over on Softpedia. Softpedia News, to be exact. Okay, so I really like this article. This comes from Fedora Magazine. It was posted today, the 7th of October 2019, by T. Dawson. And it's got a simple title, IceWM, a really cool desktop. And I couldn't agree more. So the article says, IceWM is a very lightweight desktop. It's been around for over 20 years, and its goals today are still the same as back then. Speed, simplicity, and getting out of the user's way. I used to add IceWM to Scientific Linux for a lightweight desktop. At the time, it was only 0.5 meg RPM. Or I guess I should have said it was only a 0.5 meg RPM. When running it, it used only 5 meg of memory. Over the years, IceWM has grown a little bit. The RPM package is now 1 meg. When running, IceWM now uses 10 meg of memory. Even though it literally doubled in size in the past 10 years, it is still extremely small. What to do? Oh my goodness. All right, I'm having some issues reading this evening. I do apologize. Let me get back to the article here. What do you get in such a small package? Exactly what it says, a window manager. Not much else. You have a toolbar with a menu or icons to launch programs. You have speed. And finally, you have themes and options. Besides a few goodies in the toolbar, that's about it. And then it kind of walks you through the installation and your different options during installation. Also kind of walks you through the theming toolbar. And that is about the end of the article. So if you're interested in reading that and learning about IceWM, you can find it on fedoramagazine.org. And it's under IceWM, a really cool desktop. The next article is from, well, the Mozilla blog. Okay. And this one is in regard to net neutrality. Breaking down this week's net neutrality court decision. This was written by Amy Keating and Alan Davidson, October 4th, 2019. This week, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit issued its ruling in Mozilla versus Federal Communications Commission, or the FCC. The court case to defend net neutrality protections for American consumers. The opinion opened a path for states to put net neutrality protections in place, even as the fight over FCC federal regulation is set to continue. While the decision is disappointing as it failed to restore net neutrality protections at the federal level, and that's unfortunate, or maybe fortunate, because I've heard people from different sides, and that's fine. I really don't have an opinion on it because I've honestly not looked that far into it, but I think this is probably an important article to look into and understand all angles of this. So I'll continue with the article. The 3-judge panel disagreed with the FCC's argument that the FCC is able to preempt state net neutrality legislation across the board. States have already shown that they are ready to step in and enact net neutrality rules to protect consumers, with laws in California and Vermont, among others. The court is also requiring the FCC to consider the effect of the repeal may have on public safety and subsidies for low-income consumer broadband internet access. The court did find that the FCC had discretion to treat broadband access like an information service and remove the previous rules, but as Judge Millay said, and Judge Wilkins concurred, that was with significant reservations. Quote, I am deeply concerned that the result of upholding much of the 2018 order is unhinged from the realities of modern broadband service, unquote. Nevertheless, the judges stated that they felt that their hands were tied by existing legal precedent, and invited the Supreme Court to Congress to step in. Okay, great. That is over on the Mozilla blog, and I kind of butchered the article, and I do apologize. So what I want to talk about on the podcast today is my attempt to get a video game running. Excuse me, I got a bit of a cough going on. So the video game is a game from 1994, 93. I believe the original release date was 93. I could be wrong, but it is a DOS title. And that game is Descent. And so you're probably wondering, well, how did you fail to get Descent running? Because you can probably run it on your phone with no issues. But this is a very special version of Descent. This was actually ported by a company called MacPlay out of Irvine, California, and released in 1995 for the PowerPC platform. So that's kind of cool. And the best thing about this disc is it's actually in incredibly cool condition. Like it's got like a minor, like a hair scratch on the surface of the disc, which didn't affect it in any way as far as I could tell. The installation actually went very smooth, but I was having so many issues with actually getting it to work, and I never resolved those issues and actually getting it to work. So I don't own a PowerPC system, so I decided to use SheepShaver and a helpful guide from Redundant Robot. Now, I'm not completely sure on the legalities of utilizing any of the provided software from Redundant Robot. So I'm not going to include any links to that, but you can feel free to, check that information out on your own. That's Redundant Robot. The cool thing about SheepShaver is that you actually have the option to not just use digital, but use optical media to install your operating system. So once you get your SheepShaver running, you can just install your OS 9 disk and you're good to go. You're ready to go and install it and get up and running. So that's pretty cool. Now, I didn't have an optical disk, so I did use the software provided from Redundant Robot to actually test this game and see if I could get it running, which I couldn't, but that's okay. So I had issues with SheepShaver. I could not. I tried for, I'd say altogether, probably a couple hours to get it actually to run on 2 different systems, and I had absolutely no luck getting that to work. So I figured, you know what, it's included in the Fedora repository, so I decided I would get a 32-bit image of Fedora. And why 32-bit is because most of the use that I'm going to be using the computer, the old-looking computer, it's not an old computer, but it's the peripherals and the case and all that, they look old. I thought, I'm going to be running some older software on here. I may as well put a 32-bit Linux on here. And you're probably thinking, well, you've got 8 gigabytes of RAM in there. What are you going to do about that? But there's actually a kernel patch available that allows you to use up to 64 gigabytes on a 32-bit system. So that was my plan. So I got these are just some of the issues that I had. I decided I'll install Fedora, so I flashed a USB flash drive with the 32-bit Fedora image, but the system would not recognize it, and I was very frustrated because I knew that this particular system, that's the HP Pro 6300 motherboard, I knew that system had as an option when it was shipped to run a 32-bit Windows XP. And so I thought, well, maybe it's my media that I'm using. Maybe it's the USB. And so I burned a DVD and I tried to install it that way through optical media, and I still had no luck at all getting that to run. And so I decided, well, they must have had some kind of 64-bit bootloader to actually get that installed on the system or something, because the BIOS is absolutely not going to recognize it, and I gave up on that. So I went to my last resort, which was Alien, which now that I think about it, should have maybe just been the first thing that I tried. And if you don't know what Alien is, it takes a package that is made for one distribution, it disassembles the package and reassembles it for a different package manager. And so there's really no guarantee that it's actually going to work. And oftentimes it doesn't work, but oftentimes it does work. So I downloaded the latest SheepShaver for Fedora 30, the 64-bit binary, and I used Alien to convert it to a .deb, because the systems that I'm running are both based on Ubuntu. They're both derived from Ubuntu distributions. One is a 1904, the other an 1804. And the package installed and it ran perfectly fine. So I thought everything was good from there, but I was wrong. I did not succeed at getting this game to do very much, but I had to configure a SheepShaver in a very specific way to get the game to actually launch. Now, with the default settings in SheepShaver, the OS 9 image, it worked flawlessly. And I looked around in the OS 9 image, and that operating system, like I'm not a fan of Mac, but that operating system is absolutely awesome. They did a fantastic job on that operating system. It really is cool. If you've not taken a look at it and you have the opportunity to, I think you should. It's really, really cool. A really cool operating system. I just really admire the way they did everything in that operating system. Very, very cool. So anyhow, back on topic of the Descent port, I could not get the thing to actually launch the game. It would crash over and over. So if you're watching the video version of this podcast, I'm showing some video here just the disc and the back of the disc, the front of the disc, and those things, all to do with the disc. But the point of this video is to show some screenshots of the Mac OS 9 actually running in the virtual machine in the SheepShaver. And so I did take a few screenshots. I got it to where it would boot the system. I could launch the game, but after going through the briefing part of the game, which is the very beginning of the game, and it would lock up as soon as you were in the actual game where you're in the vehicle. The system would freeze every single time, and I never got it past that point. But to get that far in SheepShaver, there were a few things that I had to do. The first thing was it would only launch the game if I selected specifically 64 megabytes of RAM for the system and tick the box that said ignore illegal memory accesses. And if I didn't have that ticked, it wouldn't work. And also the enable built-in 68K DR emulator, which in brackets says experimental. And the last thing was I had to have the quick draw acceleration ticked. Now the refresh rate of the system did not affect it. The resolution did not affect the game or the emulator, but I could not get the game to do anything more than the very beginning and being able to go through and change settings and those sorts of things. But actual gameplay, I just could not get it to work, unfortunately. So it was a partial success, I guess, getting to look at the game installed from the optical media. Now this game, it is abandonware, so if you're interested in getting a copy of this, you can grab a digital copy from abandonware. But this game it's just really cool to have an optical copy of this game, a Mac port from '95. It's very cool. So this is my raffle item for the week. I intended to announce it last week, and that didn't work out. I figured that I could get the game running so I could actually do some video of the game running, but unfortunately I wasn't able to do that. So that's kind of where we're at on that. And that's pretty much all I have to talk about today on the podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about some other interesting things, and I hope you enjoyed this. If you've had any success with running games using SheepShaver, please either let me know by commenting on the YouTube version or commenting over on archive.org or joining the forum at LibreQuest.org and letting me know how that went, because this was I don't know, it was unfortunate that I wasn't able to get it to do more than it did, but it was fun. It was actually a fun thing to mess around with. I've never seen the Mac port of Descent before, and I got a hold of this copy, and it's just in pristine condition. But for the raffle, if you're interested in having this copy of Descent, you can join over on Subscribestar. It's $1 a month, and you'll automatically get entered into a raffle to get anything that I just want to pass on to listeners. So thank you again for listening, and I will see you back here tomorrow, or you will hear me back here tomorrow rather. And thank you again for listening. I'll see you then.